Good evening, fake folks. This is the Brum Show, and it is exactly 8:07. We normally start our Brum Show at this hour, and your host tonight is Junius D. Zoka II, and we have a guest with us here tonight. Our guest is Jebe Kawai
It's
Tubat-
pronounced Tubate.
Tubate, Tubate, and she's going to be with us tonight. I'm so sorry for the pronunciation of your name, but I think she's going to get that correct for us as we go forward. But as we normally do, we begin our show with the famous music that play to the Liberian people for us to give Councillor Tiawanse Gonglo the chance to lead this nation. So let's roll away our curtains tonight with our famous song. All right, this is how we roll away the curtains tonight. And behind the curtain, we have for you one of the famous high working lady of the Republic of Liberia. And for this, she's going to be introducing herself fully. But for now, I will be calling her sis Jebe because of the way she like to be called. She's a permanent woman also from the Republic of Liberia. She is a mother, as you can see on the board. She is a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And she is also an advocate for the vulnerable. And we all know what it is when you are a vulnerable person. That is, I don't have to explain all of that. I mean, you you got needs for what your government's supposed to provide, and they are not providing that, or you're supposed to have the necessary things that your parents supposed to provide, probably because of death or because they don't have employment. She is also in that corner to also advocate for such a kind of people. Tonight, with us, we have says Jebed, and we ask her to do a quick introduction of herself, and then we can continue our show. Welcome to the show tonight, to the Brum Show, Miss Jebed. How are you this evening?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Should I call you Junius or Mr. Zoga? Which do you prefer, sir?
Juniors, it's okay. That's fine with me. Yes.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much. I'm doing well, and thank you for having me. The right pronunciation of my name is Jebe Kawa Tubate. I understand that I myself may be mispronouncing it because there's actually a tribal connotation to it that it's supposed to be like a song that you're singing. So I've been told that I even mispronounce it myself. But oh well, the easiest way to refer to me is Jebe, or some people say Sis Jebe, because I am in the ministry and I've been a servant of the Most High God for some time now. I'm also a proud mother of three biological, but many, many more that are all very near and dear to my heart.
Okay.
Children.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sis Jebet. Can I also call you Sis Jebet while we are here? Even
Yep.
officially, we can say Jebet or Tukbated anyway, Miss Tukbated or Jebet. That's okay with you, right? All right.
Yes.
So,
It's fine.
this platform, we're here to discuss issues surrounding political activities in our country, the Republic of Liberia,
Hmm.
and especially so now that we are in the election period. So basically, what we'll be discussing tonight will be you are someone who have interest in Councillor Tiawan say Gonglo. Am I right?
You're absolutely right. Yes.
Okay, so that's one of the major reasons why we have you here tonight on this show, and we will be having a conversation and engaging each other with questions that are intended to instill learning in our people and to also instill into the mind what it means to be a woman of God, what it means to be a woman who will follow people or follow someone else who has a high level of probity. Can you tell me the reasons why all of the politicians in Liberia you have decided not to go with the incumbent, the president, who has all of the power? And I think you need power because you need somebody to talk for you. If I'm right, well, you can get me corrected. And then you have the former vice president, Mr. Joseph, Vice President Joseph Boyka. And then you have Cummins. And then you have Prince Johnson, who has a political party, and the rest of the other 21 political parties leaders who wants to be president for the Republic of Liberia. Why you decided to follow Councillor Tiawan Gonglo? Tell us a little bit about your
Yeah, to answer that question fully, I would have to go a little bit back with the history, but let's start with the most obvious. I mean, if I'm happy with the way things are, then the incumbent should remain in power, but absolutely not. I'm completely dissatisfied, and everyone who is a Liberian or connected to Liberia should be dissatisfied because, after all, we're in 2023. Women should still not be dying in childbirth for simple pregnancies. No, we're not speaking of the complicated ones, but just ordinary, run of the mill, if you could call pregnancy ordinary. It's never ordinary to bring a new life into the world, but a woman should not have to die just because she's trying to bring life into the world. And that's just one of many issues. Education, I mean, where do I even start? So if I'm happy, then I will stay with the incumbent, and I it's not his job to make me happy. But when I say happy, I mean if I'm satisfied. That's the proper connotation to give to how we live. So, and since that's not the case, since you can look any way as far as you want to look in any direction regarding the Liberian story, there's much room for improvement, to say the least. So I'm certainly not going to be with any incumbent, regardless of their present power. Um, the only reason any president in a democracy has power is because the people put him there or her. So it's the same way that that president was put there by the people is the same way the people have a right to remove that president if they're not doing their job. So um, so much to be said for the incumbent. But then to speak of the vice president, which I understand is very popular in terms of opposition, he too is not without tainted hands. I will not give him the leeway to say he was not president in the past. The fact is, you had close ties with the previous government, which also was not as we expected, especially that government where they had access to many more resources. I mean, after all, the president is said to have been a product of an Ivy League school, Harvard educated, and all the credentials, Prize winner. So why not? Why didn't Liberia get to the place where she should have been today under that regime? And if the former vice president was part of that, then he too has some part to play in terms of blame. And then the same would go for all the other landscape of individuals. To be honest, I don't know every single one of the 21 that you mentioned, but the ones that stand out to me, even including the United People's Party, which is where my father had been Secretary General for many, many years, along with many other greats that opened the eyes of the Liberian political um, constituents, even any of them, I feel if we look at the integrity of an individual, then they must be able to stand on their own and not just ride on the wings of a political party. And I believe candidate Gonglo, just from a distance, I don't know him personally, but I did share a living space many years back in the same area during the interim government. And uh, one thing we kept hearing about him was his integrity. And I'm just trusting God that he hasn't changed or moved away from that level of integrity. And so he's a name that I would be interested in hearing more about and then finally giving my full support to.
Councillor Tawan, Gonglo is not a strange character when it comes to high level of probity in the Republic of Liberia. He is uh, a renowned human rights lawyer, and he resigns from the Ellen government because of policy difference, as he always said that. But the Liberian people can come out to say because of corruption, but he always said because of policy difference. Now that he also in his agenda, he believed in women or women leadership. But in couple of days, he chose his vice president, and that vice president happened to be a male counterpart. All right, that's somebody to run along with him. Now, you are an advocate for young women, for the vulnerable as well. And from where you spoke, uh, it seemed as though that you are a lady, yes, but it seems as though that you weigh more on the side of your agenda. So, what comment can you make based on his choice of a male and not a female?
Yeah, I mean, I have to be very honest with you and say that was disappointing for me to hear once I uh, got wind of his selection, because that would have been a perfect opportunity for him to showcase his support of women in politics. What better way to do that than to make uh, a woman your running mate? So I'm sure he has his reasons for finally settling on another male in the position. But I can say that without having spoken to him and finding out his reasonings, the typical reasons of, there not being qualified women who are also willing to take on the role, uh, by now we should have overcome all of those barriers if we want to be serious about empowering women in politics. And why? Because it's so obvious that a woman bears many, many roles. And then to add on politics uh, on top of her numerous roles as a wife, as a mother, as a career person. Some women even are still students because some people decide to go back to finish their education. Uh, it's a community leader, on it goes. The roles are so many for a woman. And to add politics to that is as though you were adding the last straw to a camel's back. But be that as it may, whatever the reason that a woman would decide not to run for office, I think it's incumbent upon all of us who want to promote women in politics to actually investigate and find out why good candidates of women are refusing the call, and go after those barriers and remove them so that indeed the entryway would be there for a woman to participate. Because I tell you, without women participating actively in leadership roles in politics, we are going to be replaying the same scenarios that have been plaguing our nation election after election. And we'll be dancing to the same tune if we don't make a serious change.
Are you frustrated? Even though you say you are disappointed, but are you frustrated over the fact that he has chosen he has chosen another male and not a female? And I mean, do you intend to withdraw your support for him?
No, I wouldn't go so far as to withdraw my support. I would definitely want to hear him answer the questions that we have as to why he did make such a selection. And again, I can say right here that it's not good enough for him to tell me that there weren't qualified women, because I can assure you there are more than enough qualified women who would run if just a few of the barriers were removed. For instance, what are some of those barriers? Can a woman easily campaign across the nation, going from village to village, town to town, city to city without protection as a male can? No. She is at risk for violence. She is at risk for sexual assault, even while she does her job as a politician. Now, why not remove those kinds of barriers? Or why not ensure that she has what it takes to be protected as she campaigns across the landscape? Definitely that could be done. What about, who cares for her children while she's out on the road? Then why not make provision for her to be able to either, have adequate childcare while she's away, or have enough resources for the children to be itinerate with her on the path. Certainly, she shouldn't have to give up one to do the other. But have any of those things been addressed? Or is it just that, we already don't want to do it, so we'll just ask for asking's sake? And as soon as there's any hesitation, we will say, at least we tried, but no one wants to do it. I hope you're understanding the meaning here.
All right, all right. I think you are ahead of the entire discussion, and that's very fine. Um, we see that there are lots of women group. First of all, there are lots of women groups which has established and been supported by the United Nations, the UNDP, under the government of the first woman to be elected in Africa, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, which we spoke about. And unfortunately, what your plead for women standing up into higher offices in our government did not happen. If we begin to discuss that, someone could say, "But Gloria Scott, she was sometime a chief justice and associate justice." We had Ellen Johnson Sirleaf have said she was president. We had Morris to have been chief justice as well, and we have a lot of women who were appointed as minister, like minister of gender. We have a lot of women that work within that area. So, what is it about? I mean, how many women do you want to be present? What percentage of women are you talking about to be present in government?
The percentage I'm looking for is 50%, because that would be reflective of the population of women versus men in the uh, broader society. So you go into any uh, place, public space, you're going to find that women make up almost the majority in most cases, except when it comes to politics, as though all of a sudden there are just fewer women in the population, and that's not the case. And by you naming one or two women in the sphere of leadership, I don't think that would be sufficient, because even if you're at the top of the political power structure, if you're the only one there, then that certainly is not representation. That's just one person reaching the pinnacle of political power. What we're talking about is the fact that if you have a population of people, right? I know that's redundant for me to say population of people, but the population of any nation. If you look at the general public, and you have about half of the populace without a voice in the political sphere, then how is that a democracy? What you actually have is 50% of the people generally making the decisions for 100% of the people. And it's even more than 50%, right? I'm sorry. So, what I mean, let me explain what I mean by that statement I just
Yep.
made. If
Yep.
men make up about 50% of the people, and women make up 51% of the population, then why is it that men would have 90% of the say? And where do I take the 90% figure from? Because if you look at those names you call the females that did happen to get into political power, compared to the total number of men in that same or equivalent level of government, then they're still outnumbered. So, for instance, if you look at the present cabinet of about 19, I believe, there's five women, which actually that's one of the better numbers because it's at 20%. But look at the lawmakers. The Senate has 73 members, but only 10% of those are women. So that's where I get the 90% men making the decision when they're only 50%. So right there, there's inequality. There's a voice that's not being heard. There are issues and interests that are not being represented because you have overrepresentation of just one population or one aspect of the population of the country. It's very lopsided. It's just that, men can't see it very clearly because when you're already enjoying the privilege, it's really hard for you to relate to the injustices that the other side is experiencing.
All right. Uh, when Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became president for the Republic of Liberia, women have got all of the opportunities to have set the premise for women to be equally represented in the government, even within the House of Representatives and the Senate. Uh, but up to and including today's date, we still have not a complete representation, like you said, in that government or in the upper and lower houses, women to be able to speak on behalf of the kids they have, on behalf of other women. And I'm very optimistic that the reasons why there still exists infant mortality rate at a higher level, if we were to count the countries around the world, I think we come first. It's because women are not, their voices are not being heard in the upper and lower houses to make recommendations or to follow up those funds that have been disbursed for hospitals to be furnished and be proper for the caring for women. Uh, what you just briefly touch on the barriers, on some of the barriers, if you will, could you briefly or could you increase on what you think, other than women going to run elections and they are exposed to maybe sexual violence. Of course, that cannot be, because if you're going down to Grand Bassa County, or if you go into Lofa County to run a campaign, you're going to have a group of men, uh, people to protect you. So, I mean, you are not vulnerable to sexual assault or what have you. But what do you think, other than what you have listed in your previous explanation? What are some of the barriers do you think and challenges that women have, that stopping them from pushing to become part and parcel in higher decision making areas in government? What do you think? What are some of the barriers and challenges?
Oh, I have many thoughts, and I think my thoughts are backed by the statistics. But before I get to that, let's even address point you made about the former president, Ellen Johnson, to leave, making it possible for women. I mean, then because she was president, that would mean women had the best opportunity, which is not the case in a democracy. It's not like it's a dictatorship where the president could go and start appointing women. No, those every woman still has to compete in the landscape just as a man does. Please remember, we're not advocating that things should be handed out to women. We're just advocating that the playing field be made fair. So the rules are heavily on the side of male dominated politics. So, for instance, let's now come to the barriers that a woman would face. We all know women are primarily, especially in the African setting, we're the ones that would be responsible for all the domestic affairs. So, from having the children to taking care of the children to cooking and cleaning and just running the whole household. Now, who is supposed to be doing that while the woman is away in her political exercises? I'm sure there are some progressive husbands that might want to take on the role for just a little bit, but not long term, not the kind of uh, length of time that it would require for a woman to become a seasoned politician, because that's not a one time thing. This is a cycle of politics from one elections to the next. You do not wait for 2 or 3 weeks before elections before you become or before you get familiar with the road. Otherwise, you will not be known enough to make a case for becoming a viable candidate. So the role that women have traditionally played, and mind you, I'm not advocating that we don't play that role, but I'm just stating a fact. Just that burden alone, without a place to put it while she goes about her political campaigning, that would need to be addressed. So, like I said, what about having daycare, alternative childcare or domestic help, other uh, pla- um, things that could be put into place so that it would give the woman the space to go off to do the political campaign. And besides just the domestic responsibilities that a woman has to her family, and what woman doesn't want to do well for her family, but besides all of that, there's even the biological obligation, because men aren't the one that go off to have children, but a woman does. Like, what happens if in the middle of her campaign she finds out that she's actually, about to, in the next 9 months, have a child? There's all of that, in order for her to still continue in politics while bear a child, something would have to be done while she's reaching even the late stages of pregnancy, because there's no way that she can say, you know what, I'm putting off the pregnancy for now, and then I'll get back on the campaign trail. She would be left far behind. So who accounts for that time that a woman would have to, take to go off and have her children, or even one child? No one accounts for that. And yet, without women doing that, our society would soon end. Women have to continue to bear children. But what we're saying is that it's so obvious that there are um, challenges and barriers, but instead of the society at large helping to mitigate the effects of those barriers, we just ignore them and say, oh, the woman doesn't want to be in politics, without asking the reason why, and haven't found out the reason, then finding some ways to mitigate those barriers and challenges.
All right. I disagree with you that Ellen being the president did not just give all right to the women to just jump the gun, and then she closed other opportunities to other people like the men, and just give opportunity to the women. Now, if you can see below here where we see the rolling tops below, all it says women are role models and inspiration. Research has shown that women leaders in politics serve as role models and inspire future generation of women to engage in politics. So this is where she had the opportunities. This is where she had the opportunities to set up a network a network that will empower the women, set up a system, set up support where women who have children and political party leaders will have the opportunity to go out there to run their elections and then come back home, and they also have, they also can meet their kids home, where there are opportunities where people begin to take where people take care of them, and then when she comes back she see whoever is responsible. But she fell in this process. Now uh you have like more than 5 women groups during her tenure. And as I'm looking at that, I see somewhere here it says women empowerment, and then you see educare women, educare for women. That is, this system was there to educate women, empower them. But unfortunately, all of these groups failed to provide the requisite mentorship for women to go after high uh, political power, if we may call that, or also go in places where there are decision making places for the country. Now, if you were given the opportunities tomorrow to head a group of women, what would be your role?
Oh, first of all, it would be a very honorable role to be chosen as a leader among other women, which I'm sure each woman brings to the table many, many attributes that are useful for herself, her family, and those of, that of her community. But I mean, my question would be right back to you. Why is it that we seem to only be designated to be leaders of women? Why can it not be a concept that a woman can also lead men and other women, and or mix of men and women? But that's exactly the point I'm making. Going back to the former president, if you're the president, yes, now you have executive power to appoint women to certain cabinet roles. But what we tend to find, and that definitely was a failing of the former president, and so I agree with you that missed, she failed in a very glaring opportunity to put more women in power where they would become the role models and the inspiration for the younger generation. What I'm saying to you, however, is that in as much as all she had was executive power, the key places where women can now come onto the political scene, which is which is through the political parties, which are the gatekeepers of political power, was still not addressed. And even for her party, I don't recall if there was anything done particularly well to encourage and support women who would want to run through the party ranks and become a candidate for either the House or for the executive branch. So, what I'm saying is that just having the words to say to a woman and to say that, yes, you can do it, and being a cheerleader in that sense is definitely not enough. We're talking about real support systems. So ensuring that if a woman is on the trail, she would have the protections that she needs so that she's not isolated and at risk for any kind of assault, even violent assault. The, there's a lot of education that needs to continue. I'm not saying it hasn't been done, but it definitely needs to be more widespread. We're talking 2023, and there's still some men that feel the woman's place is only within the domestic realm. And that is a problem. Some people will agitate just because they want the woman to get off the campaign trail and go back to the traditional role. And so the kind of violence that they would exert against the woman, because physically will a woman be able to protect herself as much as a man? But even for men, men will go around with bodyguards because you know that in the political arena, it can become very agitated. And so, if those things aren't in place for a woman, then why should she put herself and her family at any sort of risk? We're asking the woman to make even more of a sacrifice than what the men counterpart would make.
All right, thank you so much. We're kind of a little bit, pivot from what we are discussing, and then we come right back to that. It is not actually a complete pivoting, but there was something else that you brought in, which I want to make. I want to address that. Number one, you talking about, women being vulnerable, and we all know that if a woman won a campaign trail, I mean, she could easily be assaulted and what have you, based on her weaknesses biologically and all of that. But here, previously we discussed why he chose a male and not a female. Now I happen to have some conversation with the vetting committee head, and I was told that more than three qualified women were given the opportunities. And one of these women came up. As a matter of fact, she has promised. I mean, I don't want to call name because it might not be appropriate for some of them. She was very much amazed, and she have consented almost halfway, but she has to consult the husband and family and all of that. And when she came back the next day, it was a different story. And I know this lady also personally. It was a different story. And guess what? The story was, here in Liberia, our community is completely broken. There is a complete this organization of our community, and so we are a poor family. And once these people we refer to as Zogo, once they hear, and they are supporters of the incumbents, once they hear that this lady and her family have agreed to run along with Councillor Tawan Gonglo, we will be attacked. And so she turned that down. And two other women as well. You see, so it took Councillor Gonglo a lot of time before he could make this decision. All right. Now, that is not an excuse, as you said from the beginning. So we go right back to your explanation and your role if you were to be given the opportunity of to be selected, and or give women the time to be able to make the choice. It requires a lot of teaching. It requires this. It requires that. Now, what I'm interested in knowing from you is there a system, if any, if you know about any? If not, if you wish to make a suggestion, do you think is there a system in place in our country that could mentor young women, those who are progressive, those who go into school, or those who are not? Do you think there is an organization? Have you heard about any? If not, do you wish to suggest that there should be a network that will specially? Now, let me make one clarity again before I end my question. You previously mentioned that why women alone? Why it can't be men? Now, when a system is broken, there must be some factor which break that system down. If there is a weak portion of that system that causes the system to break down, then of course you need to give support to that system. What we're discussing here is that the system, our system, is not actually represented based on, it's not gender-based represented. Women are not reflected, even up to 30% not. So what we want to do here is to support that system. So I'm not being I'm not being partial to say women, but I'm interested in the support that women will have so that that system can be stronger. Okay, if we can I get up to 50%, if we can get up to 35 to 40% of women or representation in the government, then of course we're getting somewhere. So back to the question that I'm interested in saying, do you know of any system Or do you suggest that there should be a network that can be able to mentor women in this region?
So I've been maybe, when was I last in politics in Liberia, from a different perspective, when I worked with the National Elections Commissions in the 2010, 2011, I'd say 2009 to 2011 was the time I was there. And that was such a wonderful opportunity for me to learn so much about the different aspects of women in politics, because I was actually heading the department at the time, and we did so much work, and there were many different women's groups, but it's been a while since I've been out of touch with all of it once I returned um, back stateside. What I would like to say, though, even if I don't know of it personally, I'm more than confident that those groups, or groups like those groups, continue to exist in Liberia. So I think the structure is already in place. I would say there's education happening among the women, but that's just part of the problem. It seems to be every time you isolate the women to say, you lead the women and let's educate the women, those are the ones that are being educated as to what needs to be fixed, but there's still no political power that they have in order to help fix what needs to be fixed. It continues to be structures that are heavily male dominated. So the mentorship, I think, is definitely important. We need all this education, but it should be more broad based. Everyone needs to be educated as to these issues. So, for instance, let's go back to the scenario of the individual that was the woman that was propositioned to become a running mate. And you can see she had the will, but now she lacked the power to be protected.
Exactly.
Why, like, why should she jeopardize her family in order to help her nation? That's unfair. That's an unfair task to ask. But here's where I'm going with this point. If there's enough education among the broad spectrum of society, even the Zogos will begin to learn that it is the place of a woman to also agitate in politics. It's okay for a woman to be in politics. Now, if you were saying to me, well, the Zogos would have been against, even if a man had been in the midst because they're pro the incumbents, that's understandable. Then we know it's across the board. But I can almost guarantee you that there are some communities, even now in Liberia, who will dislike a candidate simply because she's a woman. So that education has not trickled down to all aspects of the voting society and the society at large, for everyone to know this is a space for both men and women, and there's nothing wrong with a woman doing this. So there needn't be any animosity or reluctance to even vote for the woman just because she's a woman. So the education is not just for women. The education should be for all. And then the structure should be put in place. It's not just mentorship, because you can tell me all the time, and didn't we see Ellen rise to the pinnacle of power? Didn't we see her make history? But if that should tell you that that's not the only thing that matters. What also matters is the structures to be put in place. We need to have, safer society, well educated society, so that we all know and understand that it's okay for women to partake in politics without threat to their lives or to their families.
Thank you very much. Folks, if you are watching us, wherever you are tonight, the question tonight is it traditional practices, or is it social practices, or is it the disintegration of our community? Is that what has stopped women from partaking in politics? Tonight we have with us your daughter, your mother, the wife, and a woman of God discussing with us tonight politics. Now, someone else will ask the question, oh, but she's a woman of God, and now she's discussing politics. Wrongful question. I always told them, Joseph, he had the highest position. He has one. Joseph. He was appointed. Now look at the Ethiopian Enoch. This Ethiopian Enoch, he lowered himself to become part of the life of a Christian. All right. So men of God, women of God, get into this position to make changes. We'll take a few minutes to listen to our famous song. We'll be right back with you. Tonight, folks, Sis Jebe is actually telling us tonight the reason why women are not 100% taking part in politics is based on traditional social norms. Traditional norms. Well, the women, they're always back there, they got their kids, and if they're going to get out there to do politics, how would the kids be cared? How would the kids be taken care of? How? How will we take care of them? Social. Well, she goes up there, we see men coming in, being so biased or stereotype them, or Liberian, oh, look at the other woman, yeah, she want to be president now, and this, that, and what have you. All of this. But what can the government of Councillor Tiawan Gonglo do when he becomes president of this nation? What do you think? What do you think? You believe in Councillor Tiawan Gonglo. You know who he is. You know his practices. You have heard about him. You have seen him yourself. You have interacted with him. Do you think Councillor Gonglo is able to establish a network that will promote women? Other presidents have been there. They are not different from Councillor Tiawan Gonglo. He's the same guy. He's the same Liberian. They say the same thing, but when they get there, it's a different thing. Tell me about your Councillor Tiawan Gonglo. Do you believe and trust that when he becomes president tomorrow, he's going to change the political landscape, make it 50-50? Tell me something about that.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to appreciate you for even giving me this chance to speak directly to what I would expect from a President Tiawan Gonglo, because well, first, let me clarify. The only person I believe in is Jesus Christ. But I know what you mean by that term. It's whether or not I can trust that he will be a man of his words. The integrity that I saw many years ago, hoping and praying that it is still his key uh, characteristic, and that he hasn't gotten away from it because of being too much in the midst of many sharks. What I would say, what my expectation for him as president would be, that he would be serious about the push to have women at least more fairly represented in government than what everyone else has done. Because people always say it, but saying it and meaning it are two different things. As we know, it's commonly said, action speaks louder than words. The only time that you care about women cannot be when it's time to get them to vote for you, because you know they're the majority. In fact, that's what we've seen. They'll put the women over the women's wing, over the cooking and hospitality division in a political party, because they feel if you can get all the women, that's 50% or 50 plus one, 50% plus one, because women tend to be more in those spaces. Um, in fact, I believe for the Liberian story, women do turn out more in terms of voters than men. That could just be a feature of the population. But the thing is, once power has been gotten, then the women are again relegated to, okay, you're the gender ministry, you're the health ministry. Not that those aren't important ministries, but when last was it a female placed in a more powerful, more visible position to indeed serve as that role model? But again, it takes more than all of these visuals, all of the externals. It takes that political will from the president himself to push for, political parties and other instruments of governance to actually care to resolve the issues that are facing women. So let's have a better system all around. Do you know that, even simply put, just take the simplest problem that women face but men don't face: public toilets. So a man in the Liberian setting can, just walk behind any object and ease himself. A woman can't do that. So she has to be uncomfortable all day long if she doesn't happen to be in a place where they have a public bathroom until she gets home, or maybe to an office. And even, in the public spaces where a woman can go and do those natural biological functions are so full of disease. No wonder, women would get sick from that kind of exposure. So just a simple thing has not been resolved either in this government, in the prior government, and many other governments before. But yet they were all saying, we care about the women. If you care about the women, then you can tackle even the simplest of our issues. And by tackling those issues, you're tackling the issues for everyone, because if women make up that much of the population, that means we're impacting that much of the population. So if we're taking care of your kids, but we're sick because we got exposed from using a latrine in some unhygienic manner, it impacts a lot more than just that woman. It's about time we all see the value that women bring to society and elevate us where we belong so that we can tackle these issues in a real way.
Thank you, Jebe. Before leaving you, folks, you watching us all over the world tonight. Jebe, Kawa, Tubate have just said that women have the political will and they have the commitment, as they do to their husbands and to their children. They have the political will, they have the commitment to serve in government. Plus, there is no legal barriers, there are no legal impediments to them becoming, to them holding high offices in government. But there is only one thing, common thing, easy or common things that have to get them towards these areas are not being done. And how can this be done? There must be a network set up to support this system for women to be able to participate in politics 100%, not just say 30, 40. No, we want them. And again, we go to the quote right below us. Women are role models and inspiration. Women leaders in politics serve as role models and inspire future generation of women to engage in politics. There is a saying, when a woman is educated, you educate the whole world. The ministers, the pastors, the deacons that you see today, they are all being mentored by their mother. There has not been any time that the father will grab the child and say, let's go to church. It is always going to be the mother. She's going to grab their hands. You got to go to church. If you don't go to church, you ain't going to eat anything here tonight or tomorrow morning. Let's get it right. We have to have the women represented, especially in Liberia. Around the world, I mean, they are not perfect, but everything about Liberia is wrong. We have to set it straight. We're about to leave you all. But we're trying to Jebe Kawa Tubate to give us her last word. I mean, her last words on this. Give us your last saying on this show so that we can be able to talk to our people in part. What is your last? What is your advice to the Liberian people?
My advice to the Liberian people is that here we are again. God has given us a chance once again to change our destiny. We should not sit on it and then complain later on. It's right in our hands. To all the women, never give up. Someday we're going to get the kind of power that we need to make proper change. That someday could be today, but very realistically, it could even be in the next election, especially if we go with candidates like Councillor Gonglo. That could be an opportunity based on what we know about his integrity, even though he didn't do us well when he chose a male counterpart. Until we know his reasons, we'll give him a pass. But at least here's an opportunity again for us to change things. We need to stop waiting for foreign governments, foreign aid, foreigners to do it for us. The ball is in our court. We have the opportunity today to prepare for that election day and get it right this time. We've gotten it wrong for over 100 years, 175 years almost. It's time to get it right. Vote right and vote women and vote the best candidate, which at this junction, I'm thinking it's Councillor Gonglo.
All right. Again, we need to have it right. The children of Israel stayed the longest in the wilderness because they were doing the same thing over and over, and so they have to meander in that wilderness along the river. They were doing the same thing over and over. We say that's the same people. That's not the same people. Or when he get there tomorrow, he's going to do the same thing. That's not true. Can't you see? If you don't have ears to hear, you don't have eyes to see. Councillor Tiawan Gonglo left his lucrative job as what you call at the Ministry of Justice. He was the Solicitor General. And we know how much power the Solicitor General has. We know how many bases the Solicitor General can touch in a daytime if he wants millions of dollars in his pocket. He can do that. We know about that in Liberia. We've seen it. We have seen some Solicitor Generals. But here again, he resigns for the Liberian people. And I mean, he had a minister that always used to laugh at him. There was some 900 gallons of gasoline given to him for some reason to go up and come down. And then he took the one and he carried the gallons back, carried the slip back to the executive marshal and said, "Look, I don't need that. I don't need this amount of gasoline. I only just need this one to carry me back home and back to work." And they were like, "What? But it's for you." He said, "No, it's not for me. This is not for me." Who can ever do that? Who can ever do that? It's not the same person. Folks, when we get to the ballot box, we must make sure that we change our mind at this time and turn to the best candidate. Tonight, we have had with us Jebe Kawa Tubate, a wife, a mother, the minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and an advocate for the vulnerable. We thank you so much for being with us on the Broom Talk Show. It was nice talking to you, and we exhausted in details. We hope women listen to this. Men also listen to this and bring up their girls' children the way in which it's supposed to be so that they can be encouraged to take part in politics. Because when you educate one woman, you educate the entire country. Thank you for being with us, and we see you next time. It was nice having you.
Thank you for having me.
Alrighty. Thank you so much. And bye-bye. See you next time.
Bye.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is how it draws back to close that. Tonight you have been listening to Jebet Kawa Tubate discussing in details with us how well the Liberian people must be able to take in women and make sure that they also form part of the decision making process. If you don't see us again, we're going to be here on Saturday. But this is how we turn down the curtains. Thank you so much and see you